Hello everyone, let us introduce ourselves. So my name is Waldemar Karpa. I'm here, Professor of Economics at Kozminski University, and today I'm with my dear friend Tomasso Ostillio, Ph.D. candidate in finance and soon to be also Professor of Economics, and we are here to talk about what is being published in general economics, economics theory, and we would like to share this knowledge with you. So we want to install some kind of cyclical meeting that we invite you to participate with the comments down below, and we would like to have some suggestions from you if you wish to provide us with some interesting topics that you would like to hear us talking about. And today we are starting with those two books. The first one is What's Wrong with Economics, which is called A Primer for the Perplexed by Robert Skidelsky. He's Professor of Economics at the University of Warwick. And the second book, written by, sorry if I misspell it, A.V.Banerjee and Duflo, Nobel Prize winners in economics. Why this choice? Basically, you know, we are going through a very hard times right now. Not only because of pandemic, but you know, the world is going through changes because trade was disrupted. We are experiencing political turbulence, and then some people are starting to question economists about their role in real life. And basically those two books are providing some responses to what is the role of economics and what is the role of economists. So let us start to discuss maybe this first proposal, the book of Mr. Robert Skidelsky. And this is extremely interesting proposal. Why? The first reason is the following one. He's asking basically about what's wrong with current state of economics. What are the failures of economic theory? And with this book, he's providing us with some chapters ranging from methodology and then going through some very important topics such as economic growth, trade, the role of governments, questioning basically the influence of economists. So Tomasso, what is the first issue that you would like to share with us after reading this book, something that you find, let's say, maybe not shocking, because I found some issues that are shocking to me, but I would like to start with you. What would you like to emphasize? What was important for you after the lecture?
This book by Skidelsky makes some interesting points, but somehow it adds up to a long trend of literature concerning the criticism of neoclassical economics. And actually, he picks up exactly from this point. And he seems to make very interesting points concerning this. And basically what he says is that we should abandon this kind of methodology. And I believe that when somebody who is, let's say, so knowledgeable concerning economics as Skidelsky is, makes this kind of claims, perhaps we should listen to him. And in general, he makes some very interesting points, but the best point I think that he makes is this concerning the ontology of economics. So how this is going to change, how perhaps, you know, economists should be more concerned with the domain of objects they deal with. And actually he calls for a change in ontology in economics. And I believe this is a very interesting point. And perhaps, you know, some research should be done in this direction.
And don't you think that his very special approach towards economics is caused by his background? Because this guy, he's not coming from economics. He was trained as a historian, right? So he was trained as a historian, and then he discovered economics, and with this book he's addressing some flaws of economic approach towards reality. And basically, I think that the major failure that is emphasized by Skidelsky is that economics fails to put an individual into a broader perspective, whether this is societal view or even regional, etc. What do you think?
Well, there is a very nice quote. It says, in short, economics should abandon the attempt to construct a set of universal laws applicable to all situations and problems. Specifically, it should abandon the attempt to microfound macroeconomics. In other words, to insist that all general outcomes need to be explained in terms of rational choices of isolated individuals. Yes? So, and this is exactly the point that he's making when he's talking about the ontology. So it is the idea that you shouldn't somehow only think about individuals doing things, but you should rather think about networks of individuals, so people who are related within the society. And this is extremely important because in general, we're seeing this, especially in this world. We see that right now we have, let's say, massive movements that are shaping our socioeconomic trends. And I think this is really, really, really important because this is going to lead to some important changes as we're going to consider these trends as a whole, and we're not going to only focus on the individuals anymore. And I believe that this is a very, very important point. Also, if we consider that, as a matter of fact, it was movements of people who brought up many changes in history. So we cannot really think about only the individuals, because it's true that always, when we refer to history, we think about, individuals who were main protagonists in history. But at this point in time, we're seeing exactly the importance of movements of people, so groups of people doing things, and I believe that this is going exactly in the right direction, in my opinion.
So just to continue on what you have said before, I would like to make some important remark maybe for students who do not remember very well about the neoclassical view. So basically in the neoclassical economics, the core of this neoclassical economics is the individual who takes the decision following its rational self-interest. However, this individual is like falling from the sky without history, personal history whatsoever, and then somehow by magic, individual choices are somehow aggregated at the macro level, and then economists are trying to explain social and economic phenomena, just drawing conclusion from aggregation of individual behavior, which this guy, not only him, but what is stressed here is that to this extent, existing mainstream economics has its limits.
Yes, I agree with this, but there is, let's say, also some downside in all of this, because as I said at the beginning, this book adds up to a very long trend in the literature. So we have many authors writing about how economics fails to make its predictions and why these predictions are wrong. And perhaps this is very interesting also to say, but somehow this falls also into some kind of rhetoric that you say, okay, the neoclassical approach is not good, and we know that it's wrong for this and this other reason, and then of course we can quote also when it comes to preferences. Yes, to individuals we can, for instance, quote the importance of the findings of Daniel Kahneman and Richard Taylor, so about the inconsistency of preferences during time, and also the work that has been done by Matthew Rabin in this direction. But what is very important here when we consider all these issues together is that, yes, so we have the neoclassical framework, which is the dominant one. We have the behavioral framework that challenges the neoclassical framework, and still we did not find a synthesis between the two. So somehow to say that one is right and the other one is wrong is somehow begging the question, right? Because in the very end, we do not get out of this loop. And many sciences found a way out. It was the case, for instance, of physics, during the time when we had the let's say, fight between the School of Copenhagen and Einstein, and his followers. And, they somehow physicists found a way out of this. But, in the case of economics, this is going on forever, and we really don't know, whether really this kind of prolonged criticism is going somewhere, or perhaps it's just time to think about something in a better way.
But for instance, do you agree that applied economists should, let's say, look more into details what is happening around in terms of, other disciplines such as sociology, psychology, etc., to incorporate a little bit their view into our modeling efforts?
Well, definitely, especially when it comes to applications of theory to the reality. Well, we also know that right now we have, let's say, a big crisis also in the social sciences, because we have this problem of replications, and this is becoming a big issue. But yes, definitely economists should try some way out. One way would be this, to apply, let's say, all these models of testing, theories, and somehow, economize, if we can say, sociological theories. But at the same time, we also have, let's say, great work that has been done also by logicians and cognitive scientists who have been building very interesting models of how people change their preference through time, how your choices are depending on the way you assimilate information. And I believe that all of these kind of things should be taken into economics, because I believe that at this stage this is very, very important.
I would like to ask you about this one phrase that I personally found a little bit shocking. This is just the beginning of the chapter 3, and this chapter 3 is called Economic Growth. And the first phrase in this chapter says, the only defensible purpose of economics is to help abolish poverty, opening up a more spacious life for humanity. Beyond that, it has not obvious purpose and should leave the stage to others. I apologize, but I totally disagree with this statement. What is your sentiment about it?
Well, here there is a premise, yes, and so the premise is that we are disagreeing with the neoclassical framework. So, and if we are disagreeing with the neoclassical framework, we are disagreeing also with the classical framework. So we're disagreeing with Adam Smith, for instance, right? And well, this is true that somehow we are trying to find a way out of poverty, but this is also true that, economics as such has focused mainly on capitalist economies, and has trying to explain that, other countries which are not capitalist are not growing because they're not capitalist. Yes, this is true. And in a sense, I disagree as well.
But what is extremely, once again, surprising to me is that economic growth has a huge power. It has transformed our societies profoundly. So starting with these Anthropocene era, it has pulled out a lot of people from poverty. However, I think this is not the only one goal of economic growth. It shouldn't be stopped at just alleviating poverty. It should help us to live better, to have better care, to have better access to care, to transform our quality of life. And this should also be the purpose of economic growth, not only the poverty alleviation.
Well, that's true, and somehow, economics as such, and especially economics ecology, it also helped us a lot to understand how we're making choices. And this is extremely important. So we cannot say that the only goal of economics is to abolish poverty, definitely. But actually I would say that economics is a good way to understand also how poverty works and what is the economics of poverty, as a matter of fact. And actually the next book that we're going to discuss.
And that would make us a perfect transition to the second book, which is called Good Economics for Hard Times. That came out, I think, in something like November 2019. So that was before the pandemic. However, I think that this book By the way, in style and with the narrative, it's completely different. This one is rather for people who really understand the core of economics and can skip between, schools of economics thought, etc., etc. And this one is in style completely different, providing a very nice narrative stories. This is storytelling.
Yeah,
this is storytelling.
It is storytelling, and there is one thing that I would like to pinpoint here. There is, in this book by Skidelsky, is What's Wrong with Economics, there is a very nice quote of Paul Samuelson, right? And Paul Samuelson said, who can do science does things, and who cannot do science does methodology, right? And in a sense, we can say that if we compare, let's say, this kind of criticism, which is endless, you say, okay, so everything is bad, but actually there are people who try to, let's say, improve the paradigm of, so they did science, so to say, and actually these people are coming from MIT, and they're coming exactly from the school where Paul Samuelson was very active, and these are exactly Duflo and Banerjee.
Yeah, and those guys, I mean, they're married? Yeah. So they are a couple in life, and they're a couple in job, I should say. And basically the daily work is to provide some natural experiments in the area of development economics. Yeah. And it starts with a very nice introduction to, let's say, recent phenomena that are affecting our daily lives. And then they're making a claim saying that, the trust that people have in economists is not enough. So somehow we, as applied economists, we have failed to describe the world and to provide people with the correct solution. Am I correct?
Yes, it is true. Actually, they quote a YouGov survey that was conducted in the UK in 2017, and they asked, of the following, whose opinion do you trust the most when they talk about their field of expertise? And they say nurses came first. 84% of people polled trust them. Politicians came last at 25%, and economists were just above politicians at 25%. So it's very interesting. And actually they say trusting weather forecasters was twice as high. And this should make us think, right, concerning this situation, yes, these methodological situations.
And I think this is still binding, and I shall say it is becoming more and more important, especially right now in this time of pandemia, when we have all sorts of experts providing us with views all the time about COVID, about vaccine, etc., etc. And somehow this is, I think that our profession should be more heard or voiced. How would you describe this?
Well, it should be
what to do to provide people with, let's say, relevant information, and at the same time, this information should be clearly conveyed. Yeah.
Well, it is definitely the case, and in fact, I would say, for instance, now philosophers are having the same issue, because we have this issue of armchair philosophy, right? So it is the idea that you can discuss about whatever, but you have people in the States at Yale University, one of them is Joshua Knob, who started this new trend, which is called experimental philosophy. So they are trying to test whether people's intuitions, philosophical intuitions, are the same as those of philosophers. And actually results show that this is not the case, right? And in fact, for instance, here also they quote a survey that they carried out, and they found out that in general, people tend to be more pessimistic than economists, right? So, and somehow this is understandable, yes, because people are engaged with economic activities, whereas economists are perhaps not, and we can say armchair economics, right? And this is problematic, but I would say that the way they did it, so the way they changed methodology, Banerjee and Duflo, is very interesting, because it's exactly a way to go there and understand how things are working. And I think this is very, very promising, and this can really change things.
Yeah, so this very, let's say, practical approach to science. So these guys are not obsessed with modelization too much. Yeah, they would like to go and see. It's like, you know, a little bit of ethnographical approach to economics. Yeah, I'll go and see if I want to know how the world is organized, how it works, and then I'm trying to draw some conclusions and on that basis to formulate the proposals for policy making. Correct? Yeah. So, guys, this book is extremely interesting. This is a very nice read. If you want to complete your understanding of very important and at the same time interesting phenomena such as economic growth, income inequalities, poverty alleviation, development economics, grab this book, read it. This is storytelling. And then you will see that obviously I do not agree with everything, with every solution that is presented here.
Of course.
Yeah. However, this is a nice starting point to have at least a debate on the place of economics, because, you know, we cannot have theory of everything.
Yeah.
However, we can have some interesting insights on what is our job and what we would like to convey and what kind of myths and fake news we would like to
avoid.
Yeah?
Yes, there is this thing that they say. In fact, there is an entire chapter which is dedicated to fake news and to how, let's say, misleading information can lead people to become very polarized, also in political debates. So how people can get very angry at, you know, their situations. Like, for example, many people don't understand how migration works, so it's very easy to fall victim.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's very easy to fall victim of dangerous rhetoric in this sense. And but one thing that is very important is that it's true. Like when you study economics, well, you go through your first courses in microeconomics, you know, and more or less I would say that everybody can understand this. But then when you start looking at the mathematics, you know, and you start reading academic papers, this is not something that everybody could do. And I believe that these books are really, really important, because when it comes to economist voice being heard, well, it's very important to popularize many findings, you know, that can explain us why our beliefs are wrong. And I believe that this is a very, very important thing, and they are doing this very, very, very well.
Yeah, I totally agree. So guys, just to sum up, if you would like to have a very nice introduction into methodology of economics with some nicely done emphasis on failures for economics as a science, and then the way to escape from this trap, methodological trap in economics, and then the second book about real life examples from pretty around the world, once again tied to real life phenomena. Grab those books, and I think that this reading can be a nice complement to your everyday classes that you can get here at Kozminski and elsewhere. So guys, you can win, by the way, those books responding to the following question.
Yes. What book was written by Paul Samuelson and why it was so influential? And that's it.
Yeah, so just put your name or nick or and obviously the correct response, and then we'll get back to you for the winners. And yeah, guys, that would be the end of our first talk. We are waiting for the comments down below.
Yeah.
And we would like to see you in the future.
Yeah.
Until then, bye.
Goodbye. Thank you.